What is the greatest "fuck it, I'll do it myself" in history? In 1888, Almon Brown Stroger, an undertaker, noticed he was losing a lot of business to the other undertaker in town. He found out that the other undertaker's wife was a telephone operator, and when she intercepted people asking to be connected to Stroger's funeral home, the operator would route the call to her husband's funeral home instead. 3 years later, Stroger patented the automatic teller exchange, a system which allowed telephone users to make calls without the need for human operators, single-handedly destroying an entire workforce. Martine Rothblatt, founder of SiriusXM and unbelievable polymath, was told her daughter Genesis had 3 months to live. She had been diagnosed with a type of pulmonary arterial hypertension which was fatal. The disease causes too much pressure in the blood vessels leading from the heart to the lungs, causing them to narrow and not carry enough oxygen. So Rothblatt quit all of her other work and went to the library to save her daughter. Even though she had zero background in the field, she figured out a cure and in the process founded United Therapeutics, which is a billion-dollar biotechnology company. Rothblatt's life story is amazing. Probably the time Nando Paradieu and Roberto Canessa decided they couldn't wait around any longer and legged it for 10 days across the Andes with no warm clothes, climbing gear, or food except some scraps of their dead friends stuffed into a sock. They finally found someone out in the middle of nowhere, Sergio Catalan, who rode horseback all night and then took a bus to get some help. The mountain climbers had come from the wreckage of a crashed plane that everyone had been looking for over 2 months. They needed help for the other survivors who were injured and starving. They saved 14 of their friends. The giant Norse axemen who held the choke point at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. By the time the bulk of the English army had arrived, the Vikings on the west side were either slain or fleeing across the bridge. The English advance was then delayed by the need to pass through the choke point presented by the bridge itself. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle has it that a giant Norse axeman, possibly armed with a Dane axe, blocked the narrow crossing and single-handedly held up the entire English army. The story is that this axeman cut down up to 40 Englishmen and was defeated only when an English soldier floated under the bridge in a half-barrel and thrust his spear through the planks in the bridge, mortally wounding the axeman. 15. https://en. Wikipedia. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early, she dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne, all without a single drop of blood shed. At least until Peter turned up dead some time later under shady circumstances, but honestly for a military coup it was pretty non-violent. If saying, "fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself" isn't great, I dunno what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. Not a very old story. Manji or the Mountain Man lived in a very remote village of India whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her a lot. He tried first to persuade the government to do a mountain tunnel project there but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for 10+ years and finally soused. Desmond Doss. Single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said, "Nah," stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, he made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him. Edit, I'm aware there is a movie. I've read about him before and I know he's done more than just what is in the movie. I just didn't want to make a 3,000-word post about the many ways this guy is amazing. James Clerk Maxwell was idolized by Einstein as being the father of modern physics. Not only did he formulate the classical theory of electromagnetic radiation, but just for shits and giggles he calculated exactly what Saturn's rings were made from using pure mathematics. It wasn't until Voyager 1 and 2 passed by and took photos in the early 80s did we get confirmation that Maxwell was right. He then calculated how to take a color photograph in 1855. This was then achieved in 1861 and is recognized as the first ever color photograph. In 1947, a guy named Thor Heyerdahl was trying to prove his theory that the Polynesian islands were settled by people from South America, not Asia. Nobody believed him because it was thought that crossing such a large ocean with the technology they had back then was impossible. So he decides to build a boat using only the tools and materials available at the time these migrations took place. And then he sailed that boat across the Pacific Ocean, nearly dying in the process, but ultimately making it to the Polynesian islands.